She was carrying leftover food. The boy said, "Daddy, it's her!" Those 5 words froze the man in his tracks, slicing through the noise of the busy street as if the world had suddenly stopped spinning. A cold wind blew dust across the pavement, stirring a plastic bag that drifted between them like a silent witness to a truth long buried. The woman, fragile under the weight of a torn shawl, held a dented steel container close to her chest. Her eyes did not rise to meet theirs, yet the boy's did, full of recognition, fear, and something deeper, a longing he himself didn't understand. And the father, breath caught somewhere between guilt and disbelief, stood staring at the ghost he had tried for years to outrun. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the unseen battles people fight every day, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us bring more stories that touch the heart. The moment stretched, heavy as the fading daylight. The woman turned away, as though being accustomed to being looked at but not seen, judged but not helped. The father instinctively placed a guiding hand on his son's shoulder, hoping the boy would let it go, hoping the past would stay buried. But the child tugged at him again, insisting with a whisper, repeating the words that ripped the silence for a second time. "Daddy, it's her." This time, the father didn't look at the woman. He looked at his son. And in that look bloomed a fear that maybe, just maybe, fate had circled back for answers he no longer had. The woman walked toward a small alley where shadows swallowed her like the world had reduced her existence to a sliver between light and darkness. In her hands, the container rattled softly with each step, the sound of rice scraping metal echoing like a memory the father wanted to erase. The boy kept staring after her, eyes wide, lips trembling. Something inside him, something instinctual, refused to let go. But the father tightened his grip, turned him the other way, and said softly that they were late. Still, long after they walked away, the boy kept glancing back, as if a part of him knew this moment would matter. Her name was Amina. Once, long before life bent her to its harshest shape, she had been someone people greeted with smiles, someone whose laughter lit up small rooms in big ways, someone whose presence made others feel safe. She had been a school teacher with warm hands and a soft voice, teaching children whose names she still remembered, even though they had all grown and moved on. She had dreamed of a small, peaceful home, maybe 2 children, a garden, and afternoons filled with simple joy. That was before the fire, before grief, before the world took everything and left her a fragile shell clinging to whatever scraps of survival she could find.
Years ago, a devastating blaze had torn through her house, stealing not only her parents, but also the dreams she had quietly built. Her fiancé, once her closest friend, her comfort, her hopeful future, had left after struggling to cope with the aftermath. And though Amina never blamed him, the heartbreak had carved a hollow space inside her that nothing ever fully filled again. Pain, when layered and unrelenting, has a way of bending even the strongest backs, and Amina slowly fell into a life she never imagined. Living in temporary shelters, doing small chores for meager wages, gathering leftover food from restaurants that would have thrown it away. But she always remained gentle. People who passed her on the street rarely noticed this. They saw the unwashed clothes, the tired eyes, the slow and careful steps. They did not see how she always split her food, saving half for stray animals around the alley. They did not hear how she whispered little prayers for people who hurried past her without so much as a glance. They did not know that she taught the neighborhood children how to read whenever she could, using a broken chalk and an old box. They did not realize she was the person who once held classrooms together with patience and love. The boy who recognized her, his name was Zane, had seen her before, not as a stranger, but as the woman who fed cats near his school, the woman who picked up trash around the playground when no one was watching, the woman who once handed him a biscuit when he dropped his lunch and cried. Zane had never forgotten her kindness. It lingered inside him like a warm echo. He remembered her face even now, smudged with dust, but eyes soft and shining with care. And unknowingly, she remembered him too. She remembered him as the quiet child who once shyly thanked her for a broken biscuit, whose smile felt like a small sun on a cold day. Fate has a way of weaving circles no one expects. A few days after their first encounter, Zane saw her again, this time sitting beside an empty stall, her metal container resting by her feet as she patched an old shirt with trembling fingers. The afternoon sun cast a golden hue over her shoulders, and she looked almost like a painting of resilience. Something inside him urged him to reach her. He stepped forward slowly, but before he could speak, his father grabbed his arm once more. The father's voice cracked slightly when he said they had to go. It wasn't anger in his tone, it was fear. Deep, old, suffocating fear. Zane looked up, confused. His father rarely spoke like that. That night, Zane couldn't sleep. Questions churned inside his small chest. Why did his father react that way? Why did seeing this woman shake him so much? And most importantly, why did it feel like the woman mattered somehow, more than either of them understood? His father, whose name was Rashid, lay awake in his own room, wrestling with ghosts, because he knew her, not personally, not closely, but enough that the memories he carried stabbed him with shame. Years ago, when Amina's house had burned down, he had been one of the people who could have helped, one of the people who could have spoken up when the insurance company denied her claim due to a clerical error. Rashid was an accountant working at the same office, aware of the oversight, but too fearful of jeopardizing his job to challenge his boss. He still remembered her coming in with trembling hands, asking for help, asking for fairness, and being turned away. He still remembered her walking out with tears sliding down her cheeks, shoulders hunched, clutching papers that would fail her. And he remembered doing nothing. He had told himself he wasn't responsible, that the system was flawed, that he was powerless, that he was only following orders. But deep down, guilt had gnawed at him for years. He had moved towns shortly after, hoping distance would blur the memory. He never expected fate to bring her back into his son's eyes.
Over the next week, Zane kept seeing her, each time feeling a pull he didn't understand. Once, he saw her giving away half her leftover food to an old beggar who had fewer teeth than years. Another time, she was reading a torn newspaper aloud to a group of children sitting around her in a circle. Her voice, though thin, carried a warmth that wrapped around them like a blanket. And in every encounter, Zane felt more certain that she wasn't just a stranger. She was someone important, someone kind, someone hurting. Eventually, his determination blossomed into courage. One evening, while returning from school with his father, he tugged at Rashid's sleeve and insisted they stop for a moment. Amina sat across the road under a flickering streetlight, sharing her food with a stray dog. Rashid stiffened, ready to pull his son away, but this time Zane didn't move. Something in his small, steady gaze pierced Rashid's fear. As if sensing eyes on her, Amina looked up. Her expression carried surprise, then recognition, then a soft, tender smile that held no blame. Rashid felt the world tilt. How could a woman so beaten by life still smile like that?
How could she look at them without the faintest shadow of reproach? Instinctively, Amina began to stand, perhaps thinking she was in someone's way. But the movement made her dizzy, and she staggered slightly. The dog beside her whined. Zayn rushed forward before Rashid could stop him, supporting her by gently taking her arm. Rashid followed, helpless against the gravity pulling him toward the truth he had avoided for so long. Amina thanked Zayn softly, her voice a trembling whisper. She tried to assure him she was fine, that she just needed a moment to steady herself. But up close, Rashid could see the truth. She was thin, too thin, the kind of thin that spoke of hunger hidden behind forced smiles. Her hand shook faintly, and her clothes clung loosely to her frame. Rashid had seen poverty before, but never so personally intertwined with his own past mistakes. When Amina recognized Rashid, something flickered in her expression: surprise, awkwardness, and then a calm acceptance that made his breath hitch. She remembered him. She remembered the office. She remembered that he had seen her fall and said nothing. Yet, she did not blame him. That hurt him more than anger ever could. In the days that followed, Rashid found himself unable to stay away. Something inside him, guilt, regret, or maybe just a desire to be a better man, pushed him to seek forgiveness, not through words, but through action. He began bringing small meals, leaving them where she could find them without feeling embarrassed. He asked local shopkeepers quietly if she could help with small tasks for pay. He stood at a distance, watching her slowly gain a little strength, a little dignity back. Zayn, meanwhile, spent afternoons with her, listening to her stories, helping her feed stray animals, learning little lessons she taught through gentle wisdom. A light began returning to her eyes, and a sense of purpose bloomed again inside her heart. But healing is never that simple. One evening, as the monsoon clouds gathered, Rashid found himself sitting beside her near the alley. She had prepared a small makeshift classroom for the neighborhood children, drawing alphabets on a cardboard sheet with chalk. Her voice wavered a little from exhaustion, but her smile glowed with sincerity. Rashid watched silently, feeling a lump form in his throat. When the class ended and children dispersed, he approached her slowly. Amina looked up at him with soft eyes, waiting for him to speak. He apologized. Not in a dramatic, trembling voice, not in a desperate flood of words, but in a simple, raw, honest confession that he had been afraid back then, that he regretted his silence every single day, and that seeing her now reopened a wound he had forced shut. He said he didn't expect forgiveness. He just wanted her to know he hadn't forgotten. Amina listened quietly, her gaze steady. Then she smiled, a tired but genuine smile, and told him she forgave him long ago. She said holding on to pain only burdens the heart, and she had learned that letting go was the first step towards finding peace again. Her words washed over him like rain on parched earth. He felt small. He felt humbled. He felt free. Rashid made a decision that night. He couldn't change her past, but he could change her future. With the help of a few friends, he arranged for her to get a small job at a local school as an assistant teacher. The pay wasn't much, but it was enough to give her a place to stay and meals she wouldn't have to scavenge. When they gave her the news, she broke down, not in despair, but in gratitude so overwhelming that even Rashid felt tears prick his eyes. Life slowly began reshaping itself.
Her cheeks gained color. Her hands steadied. Her voice grew stronger. With each passing week, her spirit stitched itself back together piece by piece. The children adored her. Parents appreciated her. And though she lived modestly, she lived with dignity, purpose, and the quiet joy of knowing her life still held meaning.
Zayn remained her little companion, always eager to listen, learn, and simply be around her. Rashid found himself more patient, kinder, more attentive, not because of guilt alone, but because seeing Amina rise from ashes taught him the true weight of compassion. But the most beautiful moment came months later. Amina, now working full-time at the school, stood on stage during a small community gathering. The principal introduced her as an example of resilience, kindness, and perseverance. She spoke briefly, voice shaking with emotion, saying she was grateful for second chances, and even more grateful for people who believed in goodness despite the world's hardships. From the audience, Zayn beamed proudly. Rashid stood beside him, heart full, knowing this moment was a circle closing, a wound healing. After the event, Amina hugged Zayn and whispered that his kindness had changed her life. And in that simple embrace, Rashid realized that sometimes the smallest acts of compassion, the kind a little boy had once received as a broken biscuit, can ripple into miracles. If this story touched your heart, please like, comment, share, and subscribe. Your engagement helps us bring more inspiring stories to life. Special request: before you go, please comment below what part of the story moved you the most. The rain had finally stopped outside. The world felt soft again. And somewhere in the warmth of that community hall, 3 lives, once broken, once tangled, once distant, stood together, bound not by fate, but by kindness, forgiveness, and second chances.